Behind the golden gates and manicured gardens of Thornfield Palace lies a web of secrets that could topple a 1,000-year-old monarchy. When loyal palace guard Marcus Chen discovers Lady Victoria Ashworth, sister to Queen Consort Isabella, rifling through classified documents in Prince Alexander's private chambers at 3 a.m, he uncovers more than just a simple theft. What begins as a routine security patrol becomes the catalyst for exposing a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government, threatens international relations, and forces Marcus to choose between his oath of loyalty and his moral compass. In a world where trust is currency and betrayal comes with a crown, one guard's discovery will either save the kingdom or watch it crumble from within. The autumn rain pelted against the tall windows of Thornfield Palace as Marcus Chen adjusted his earpiece and began his midnight patrol through the East Wing. At 28, he had served as a palace security guard for 6 years, long enough to know every creaking floorboard, every shadow that danced across the ornate hallways when moonlight filtered through the ancient stained glass. Tonight felt different, though he couldn't pinpoint why. The palace corridor stretched before him like arteries of history, lined with portraits of monarchs whose eyes seemed to follow his every step. King Edmund VII gazed down from his gilded frame with the same stern expression that his living descendant, King Charles, wore during state ceremonies. The weight of tradition pressed down on these halls like a living thing, and Marcus had long ago learned to respect the invisible boundaries that separated the common from the royal. His footsteps echoed softly against the marble floors as he made his way toward the residential quarters. Prince Alexander's suite occupied the corner of the East Wing, a sprawling collection of rooms that included a private study, bedroom, sitting area, and a small library where the prince often retreated to work on his doctoral thesis in international relations. Marcus had seen the prince countless times, always polite, always acknowledging the staff with genuine warmth that set him apart from some of the more distant royal family members. As he approached the prince's corridor, Marcus noticed something unusual. A thin strip of light leaked from beneath the study door, and he could hear the faint rustling of papers. Prince Alexander was supposed to be in Scotland for a conservation summit, and wasn't expected back until Thursday. Marcus checked his watch. 3:17 a.m. His pulse quickened as training took over. Drawing closer to the door, he pressed his ear against the heavy oak. The sounds were definitely coming from inside. Shuffling papers, the soft thud of books being moved, the whisper of fabric against furniture. Someone was definitely in there, and they weren't supposed to be. Marcus reached for his radio, then hesitated. Palace protocol demanded that he call for backup before investigating any potential security breach, but something made him pause. The sounds weren't frantic or hurried like those of a common burglar. They were methodical, careful, as if whoever was inside knew exactly what they were looking for. He tried the door handle slowly. Locked, as expected. But Marcus had master keys for emergency situations, and this certainly qualified. His hand trembled slightly as he inserted the key, turned it with practiced silence, and eased the door open just a crack. Through the narrow opening, he could see a figure bent over Prince Alexander's desk, illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. It was a woman with auburn hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, wearing a dark blue dress that Marcus recognized as expensive couture. She was photographing documents with a small camera, working with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as the woman turned slightly, and he saw her profile clearly. Lady Victoria Ashworth, sister to Queen Consort Isabella, aunt to the future heir, and one of the most photographed women in the kingdom. She was supposed to be at her country estate in Gloucestershire, recovering from what the palace had announced as exhaustion following a minor scandal involving her charity's finances. For a moment, Marcus stood frozen. Every fiber of his training screamed at him to call for backup, to follow protocol, to treat this like any other security breach. But this wasn't any other situation. This was a member of the royal family, caught in the act of what appeared to be espionage in another royal's private chambers. Lady Victoria continued her work, unaware of his presence. She photographed what looked like official government correspondence, diplomatic cables, and personal letters. Marcus could see the official seals and letterheads even from his limited vantage point. These weren't just personal documents, they were classified materials that could affect national security. As he watched, Lady Victoria opened a leather portfolio and began sorting through more papers. Her movements were precise, practiced, as if she knew exactly where to find what she was looking for. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or desperation. This was calculated, planned, professional. Marcus felt the weight of his position pressing down on him. His oath as a palace guard bound him to protect all members of the royal family, but it also bound him to protect the crown itself. What happened when those two duties came into direct conflict? What happened when a protector became a threat? The sound of footsteps in the distant corridor made both Marcus and Lady Victoria freeze. She quickly shut off the camera and began gathering the documents, moving with practiced efficiency. Marcus realized he had seconds to decide what to do. He could retreat, pretend he had never seen anything, and let whatever conspiracy this was continue. He could burst in and confront her directly. Or he could wait and gather more information. Lady Victoria finished organizing the papers and was reaching for what appeared to be a small electronic device when she knocked over a silver letter opener. The metallic clatter echoed in the quiet room, and both she and Marcus held their breath, listening for any sign that the sound had attracted attention. After a long moment, Lady Victoria continued her work. She connected the device to Prince Alexander's computer, and Marcus watched as files began transferring. The soft blue glow of the screen illuminated her face, revealing an expression of intense concentration mixed with what looked like fear. This wasn't just document theft. This was a full-scale intelligence operation being conducted by someone with intimate access to the royal family. Marcus thought about the implications. The security briefings he'd attended, the constant warnings about foreign intelligence services, the elaborate measures taken to protect state secrets. And here was someone with a key to every door in the palace. Someone whose presence would never be questioned, conducting what appeared to be a sophisticated data extraction. The transfer completed, and Lady Victoria disconnected the device, slipping it into her purse. She moved to replace the documents exactly as she had found them, her attention focused entirely on covering her tracks. This gave Marcus the opportunity he needed to retreat and consider his options. As he backed away from the door, Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. Who was Lady Victoria working for? Was this about money, blackmail, or ideology? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do about it? The sound of Lady Victoria's heels clicking against the marble floor told him she was leaving. Marcus quickly moved to a position where he could observe without being seen, watching as she emerged from the study and walked calmly toward the main stairs. Her demeanor was composed, almost serene, as if she had just finished reading a book, rather than conducting espionage against her own family. Marcus waited until she disappeared around the corner before approaching the study again. He used his key to enter, careful not to disturb anything, and looked around with new eyes. Everything appeared normal. The documents were neatly organized, the computer showed no signs of tampering, the furniture was exactly as it should be. If he hadn't witnessed it himself, he would never have known that anything had happened. But something had happened. Something that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy if it became public knowledge. Marcus thought about his own family, his parents who had immigrated from Hong Kong and worked their entire lives to give him opportunities in his adopted country, his younger sister studying medicine at university, his girlfriend Sarah who worked as a nurse and believed wholeheartedly in the values that the royal family represented. What would happen to all of them if this conspiracy succeeded in whatever its ultimate goal might be? What would happen to the thousands of people who worked for the palace, who depended on the stability of the monarchy for their livelihoods? And what would happen to him if he chose the wrong side in whatever conflict was brewing? As Marcus locked the study door and continued his patrol, his mind churned with possibilities and consequences. By morning, he would have to make a decision that would change not only his own life, but potentially the course of history itself. The question was whether he had the courage to do what was right, even if it meant betraying someone he was sworn to protect. The rain continued to fall against the palace windows as Marcus completed his rounds, each step taking him further from the simple certainty he had known just hours before. In the space of 30 minutes, his world had become infinitely more complex, and there was no going back to the comfortable ignorance of routine patrols and familiar faces. He thought about Lady Victoria's expression as she worked, not the look of someone driven by greed or malice, but someone compelled by fear or desperation. What could drive a woman who had everything to risk it all in such a dangerous gamble? And who else might be involved in whatever web of conspiracy she had revealed? As dawn approached and his shift neared its end, Marcus knew that he was standing at a crossroads. The path he chose in the coming hours would determine not only his own fate, but the fate of everyone he cared about. The only question was whether he would have the wisdom to choose correctly and the strength to see it through. Part 2. Marcus Chen barely slept during the few hours between the end of his shift and his scheduled meeting with Captain Reynolds at noon. His small apartment in palace staff housing felt claustrophobic as he paced between the kitchen and living room, replaying the events of the previous night over and over in his mind. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Lady Victoria's focused expression as she photographed those documents, heard the soft click of her camera, felt the weight of the decision that now rested squarely on his shoulders. By 11:30 he had made his choice. He dressed in his civilian clothes, dark slacks and a button-down shirt that his mother had bought him for Christmas, and made his way to Captain Reynolds' office in the security wing of the palace. The corridors seemed different in daylight, less mysterious but somehow more oppressive, as if the walls themselves were watching him prepare to break the code of silence that protected the royal family from scandal. Captain James Reynolds had been Marcus's supervisor for 4 years, a former Metropolitan Police detective who had transferred to Palace Security after a distinguished career investigating white-collar crime. At 55, he had the weathered face of someone who had seen enough human nature to rarely be surprised, but who still maintained enough idealism to believe in justice. Marcus had always respected him, and now he prayed that respect was mutual. "Marcus, come in!" Reynolds called from behind his desk as Marcus knocked on the open door. "Coffee? You look like you need it." "Thank you, sir. I didn't sleep well." Marcus accepted the steaming mug gratefully, using it to warm his hands, which had been cold since he woke up, despite the mild autumn weather. Reynolds studied him with the keen eyes of a trained investigator. "Something on your mind?" "You sounded urgent when you called this morning." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that once he spoke, there would be no taking back the words. "Sir, I need to report something I witnessed during my patrol last night, something involving a member of the royal family." The captain's expression grew serious. He reached into his desk drawer and retrieved a small digital recorder, placing it on the desk between them. "This is now an official report. State your name and badge number for the record." "Marcus Chen, badge number 847. Last night at approximately 3:17 a.m., during my routine patrol of the East Wing residential quarters, I discovered Lady Victoria Ashworth in Prince Alexander's study without authorization, photographing what appeared to be classified documents and transferring computer files to an external device." Reynolds' face remained impassive, but Marcus noticed his knuckles whiten as his grip tightened on his coffee mug. "Continue." Marcus provided a detailed account of everything he had witnessed, from the first sign of light under the study door to Lady Victoria's calm departure. He described the documents he had been able to see, the camera she had used, the device she had connected to the computer. When he finished, the office fell silent, except for the distant sound of gardeners working on the palace grounds. "Marcus," Reynolds said finally, his voice carefully controlled, "do you understand the magnitude of what you're telling me?" "Yes, sir. I believe I do." "Lady Victoria Ashworth is the Queen Consort's sister. She has unlimited access to the palace, she's beloved by the public, and she's scheduled to accompany their majesties on a state visit to Germany next month. What you're describing could constitute treason." The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Treason. Marcus had known it was serious, but hearing it stated so baldly made his stomach clench. In the United Kingdom, treason still carried the possibility of life imprisonment. "Sir, I know what I saw. I understand the implications, which is why I'm reporting it to you rather than trying to handle it myself." Reynolds stood and walked to the window, looking out at the palace gardens where tourists were already gathering for the changing of the guard ceremony. "The question now is what we do with this information. If you're wrong, if there's some innocent explanation, we could destroy an innocent woman's life and create a constitutional crisis. If you're right, and we do nothing, we could be looking at a security breach of unprecedented proportions. What do you think we should do?" "We investigate. Carefully, quietly, and thoroughly." Reynolds returned to his desk and picked up a secure phone. "I'm going to call Deputy Director Hartwell at MI5. This is now beyond palace security. We're talking about potential espionage involving a senior royal." While Reynolds made the call, Marcus found himself staring at the photographs on the captain's desk. Reynolds with his wife and adult children, Reynolds receiving a commendation from the Metropolitan Police, Reynolds shaking hands with Prince Alexander at a security briefing. It struck Marcus that everyone in those photographs was about to have their lives turned upside down by what he had witnessed. "Hartwell will be here in 2 hours," Reynolds announced as he hung up the phone. "In the meantime, I need you to write out your statement in detail. Every word you heard, every movement you observed, every document you could identify. And Marcus, this conversation never happened. If anyone asks why you're here, you're reviewing security protocols for the upcoming German state visit." Marcus spent the next hour crafting his statement with the precision of a legal document. He had always been detail-oriented, a trait that had served him well in security work, but now that attention to detail might be the key to preventing or exposing a conspiracy that could shake the monarchy to its foundations. As he wrote, Marcus thought about Lady Victoria's motivations. The official story was that she had suffered from exhaustion following questions about her charity's financial management. But palace gossip suggested the reality was more complex. There had been whispers about gambling debts, about a romantic relationship that had ended badly, about pressure from creditors that her royal allowance couldn't cover. But financial desperation seemed almost too simple an explanation for what Marcus had witnessed. The professionalism of Lady Victoria's operation, the specific documents she had targeted, the sophisticated equipment she had used. This suggested something far more organized than a desperate woman selling secrets to pay debts. Deputy Director Sarah Hartwell arrived exactly 2 hours after Reynolds had called, a sharp-featured woman in her early 40s whose unremarkable appearance belied her position as one of Britain's top counterintelligence officers. She read Marcus's statement twice before speaking. "Mr. Chen, I need to ask you some difficult questions, and I need you to answer them with complete honesty. Are you certain that what you witnessed couldn't have some innocent explanation?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Ma'am, I've been a palace guard for 6 years. I know the difference between someone who belongs somewhere and someone who doesn't. Lady Victoria was photographing documents in the middle of the night, in a room she had no authorization to enter, using equipment designed for covert operations. There's no innocent explanation for that. Could you have misidentified her?" "No, ma'am. I've seen Lady Victoria hundreds of times over the years. It was definitely her." Hartwell nodded and made notes in a leather portfolio. "What we're going to do now is put Lady Victoria under discreet surveillance. We need to know who she's working with, how long this has been going on, and what information has already been compromised. Mr. Tapp, Chen, you're going to continue your normal duties, but you're also going to be our eyes and ears inside the palace. Can you handle that?" The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Yes, ma'am. Good. Because if our suspicions are correct, Lady Victoria is not working alone. Someone with her level of access doesn't suddenly decide to become a spy without significant motivation and support. We need to identify her handlers and determine whether there are other members of the royal household involved." As the meeting concluded and arrangements were made for secure communications between Marcus and MI5, he realized that his life had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just a palace guard. He had become an intelligence asset in an operation that could determine the future of the British monarchy. Walking back to his quarters, Marcus passed the tourist groups gathering outside the palace gates. Families with children excited to catch a glimpse of royalty. Elderly couples who had traveled from around the world to see the home of their constitutional monarch. They trusted in the stability and security that the crown represented, never imagining that within those ancient walls, forces were moving that could shatter their faith in institutions that had endured for centuries. That evening, as Marcus prepared for another shift, he received a text message from an unknown number, package delivered safely. Client satisfied with quality. Next shipment scheduled soon. The message was clearly not meant for him. Someone had sent it to the wrong number, but as he stared at the words, a chill ran down his spine. In the world of espionage, even wrong numbers could be significant. He forwarded the message to the secure number Hartwell had given him, then deleted it from his phone. As he walked toward the palace for his evening shift, Marcus wondered if he was being paranoid or if the conspiracy he had uncovered was already beginning to reveal its true scope. The palace looked the same as always in the gathering twilight, its windows glowing warmly against the autumn sky, but Marcus now saw it with different eyes. Somewhere within those walls, Lady Victoria was preparing for whatever operation came next, unaware that her secret was no longer safe. The question was whether Marcus and MI5 could uncover the full extent of the conspiracy before irreparable damage was done to the crown and country they had all sworn to protect. Part 3. 3 days after Marcus's meeting with MI5, the surveillance operation was in full swing. Deputy Director Hartwell had moved swiftly, placing discreet tracking devices on Lady Victoria's vehicles, monitoring her communications, and establishing observation posts around her London residence and country estate. Marcus had been fitted with nearly invisible recording equipment and briefed on signals intelligence gathering, transforming him from a palace guard into an undercover operative. The first breakthrough came on Thursday evening. Lady Victoria had returned to the palace for what was officially described as a family dinner with Queen Consort Isabella, but Marcus noticed that she arrived carrying a leather attaché case that she had never brought to previous family gatherings. Using the specialized camera hidden in his uniform button, he photographed her entering the palace's private family quarters, noting the time and her route through the corridors. Later that evening, as Marcus monitored the security cameras during his shift, he observed Lady Victoria leaving the dinner early, claiming a headache. But instead of heading to the palace's guest quarters where she often stayed overnight, she made her way to a different section of the building entirely. the administrative wing where senior staff officers were located. Marcus's earpiece crackled to life with Hartwell's voice. Target is moving toward the private secretary's office. Can you get eyes on without compromising your position? Affirmative, Marcus whispered, using the internal staircase that staff members use to move between floors without being seen by visitors. The administrative wing was normally deserted at this hour, making it easier for him to move undetected, but also making Lady Victoria's presence there highly suspicious. From his concealed position at the end of the corridor, Marcus watched as Lady Victoria used what appeared to be a key card to enter Sir Reginald Thornbury's office. Sir Reginald served as the King's private secretary, one of the most powerful and trusted positions in the royal household, responsible for managing the sovereign's official correspondence and coordinating with government ministers. She's in Thornbury's office, Marcus reported, door secured behind her. She definitely has authorized access. This revelation sent shockwaves through the MI5 team. If Lady Victoria had legitimate access to the private secretary's office, it suggested that either Sir Reginald was complicit in whatever operation she was conducting, or her authorization came from even higher levels within the royal household. Through the office's frosted glass door, Marcus could see Lady Victoria's silhouette moving around the room. She appeared to be working at Sir Reginald's computer, and the faint glow of a scanner suggested she was copying physical documents as well. This operation was far more extensive than her previous intrusion into Prince Alexander's study. 25 minutes later, Lady Victoria emerged from the office, her attaché case now noticeably fuller than when she had arrived. She walked calmly toward the main staircase, but instead of heading to the guest quarters, she continued toward the palace's service entrance, the same exit that staff members use to avoid public areas. She's heading for service exit 3, Marcus reported. Should I follow? Negative. Maintain your position. We have external surveillance to track her movements. From the security office, Marcus watched the external cameras as Lady Victoria walked to a black sedan parked in the staff lot. But she wasn't driving herself. There was already someone in the driver's seat, someone whose face was obscured by shadow and angle. The car pulled away smoothly, its license plate partially obscured by what appeared to be deliberate mud splatter. The next morning brought an emergency briefing at MI5's Thames House headquarters. Marcus found himself in a secure conference room with Hartwell, Captain Reynolds, and a man introduced only as Mr. Collins from an unspecified government department. The atmosphere was tense as Hartwell presented the intelligence they had gathered. The key card used to access Sir Reginald's office was legitimate, Hartwell began, consulting her notes. It was issued to Lady Victoria 3 months ago, ostensibly to allow her to coordinate her charity work with official royal engagements. However, we now know she's been using it to access classified materials far beyond anything related to charitable activities. Mr. Collins leaned forward. What kind of materials? Diplomatic correspondence, security briefings, advanced schedules for royal travel, and most concerning, preliminary intelligence assessments for the upcoming German state visit. Hartwell's expression was grim. If this information has been passed to hostile intelligence services, the security implications are staggering. Marcus spoke up. Sir, there's something else. The driver of the car Lady Victoria got into, I've seen him before. He was at the palace 2 weeks ago, introduced as a new member of Lady Victoria's personal security team. Do we have a name? Collins asked. David Winters, Marcus replied. Ex-military. According to his personnel file, served in Afghanistan and Iraq before transitioning to private security work. Hartwell made notes. We'll run a full background check on Winters. If he's her handler, we need to know who he's working for. The investigation took a dramatic turn the following afternoon when technical analysis of Lady Victoria's communications revealed something troubling. Hidden within seemingly innocent text messages about charity events and social engagements were coded references that, when decoded, revealed a sophisticated intelligence operation spanning several months. She's not just stealing information, Hartwell explained to the team. She's been tasked with specific intelligence requirements. Someone has given her a shopping list of exactly what they want, and she's been systematically acquiring it. The coded messages revealed targets that went far beyond royal family secrets. Lady Victoria had been tasked with obtaining information about British foreign policy toward Eastern Europe, details about military cooperation agreements with NATO allies, and advance intelligence about trade negotiations following Brexit. This wasn't simple blackmail or tabloid gossip material, this was state-level espionage. Marcus felt sick as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. How long has this been going on? Based on the message patterns, at least 8 months, Hartwell replied. Possibly longer. We're dealing with a long-term intelligence operation that has compromised some of Britain's most sensitive national security information. The breakthrough came when MI5's technical team finally tracked David Winter's background and discovered his real identity. He wasn't ex-British military at all, but a Russian intelligence officer named Dmitry Volkov, operating under deep cover and using forged credentials that had taken months of investigation to unravel. "This is a Russian operation," Collins announced to the emergency session. "Lady Victoria has been recruited by the SVR, Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. The question now is whether she's a willing asset or whether she's being coerced." Marcus thought back to Lady Victoria's expression during that first night when he had observed her in Prince Alexander's study. The fear he had seen in her face suddenly made sense. "I think she's being blackmailed," he said. "She looked terrified, not ideologically motivated." Hartwell nodded. "That matches our psychological profile. Lady Victoria has significant financial vulnerabilities that could be exploited, and her family connections make her an ideal target for coercion. The Russians probably offered to solve her financial problems in exchange for access, then gradually increased their demands until she was trapped." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. A member of the royal family, however peripheral, had been compromised by Russian intelligence and was actively stealing state secrets. The political and constitutional ramifications were staggering. "What's our next move?" Reynolds asked. Collins stood and began pacing. "We have several options, none of them good. We can arrest Lady Victoria and Volkov immediately, which would expose the operation, but also create a massive scandal. We can attempt to flip Lady Victoria and turn her into a double agent, which is extremely risky. Or we can continue surveillance and try to roll up the entire network, which gives them more time to do damage." Marcus found himself speaking before he fully realized what he was going to say. "There's another option. We use me." All eyes turned to him. "Explain," Hartwell said. "Lady Victoria doesn't know I witnessed her activities. From her perspective, I'm just a palace guard who happens to work the shifts when she conducts her operations. If we could somehow make her think I'm suspicious or that I might be willing to help her, we could draw out more information about her handlers and their objectives." The idea was dangerous, potentially putting Marcus in direct contact with trained Russian intelligence officers. But it offered the possibility of gathering crucial intelligence about the scope of the operation and identifying other potential assets within the royal household. As the meeting concluded with plans to present options to the Prime Minister and senior members of the royal family, Marcus realized that he was no longer just a witness to this conspiracy. He was about to become an active participant in one of the most sensitive counterintelligence operations in British history. The question was whether he had the skills and courage to help bring down a spy ring that threatened not only the monarchy he had sworn to protect, but the national security of the United Kingdom itself. Part 4. The decision to use Marcus as bait in a counterintelligence operation required approval from the highest levels of government. Within 48 hours, the plan had been reviewed by the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, and briefed to King Charles himself in a private meeting that would never appear in any official record. The monarchy's survival often depended on secrets, but this particular secret could determine whether the institution survived the 21st century. Marcus spent 2 intensive days at a safe house outside London, receiving crash training in intelligence tradecraft from MI5's most experienced operatives. He learned about surveillance detection, covert communication methods, and most importantly, how to appear vulnerable to recruitment while actually gathering intelligence about his targets. "The key is to make Lady Victoria believe that you're financially desperate or ideologically disaffected," explained Sarah Chen, an MI5 instructor who specialized in undercover operations. "Russians look for specific vulnerabilities, money problems, career frustrations, personal grievances against the system. You need to present yourself as someone who could be turned." Marcus practiced his cover story repeatedly. He was supposedly struggling with mounting student loan debt from his sister's medical school education, frustrated by the slow pace of promotion within palace security, and increasingly cynical about serving a royal family that lived in luxury while ordinary people struggled with economic hardship. The story had enough truth in it to be believable, while providing motivation for potential treason. The operation began on the following Tuesday evening. Marcus had arranged to be assigned to the security post closest to Lady Victoria's usual route through the palace, and he had prepared subtle signs of financial stress. An overdue bill left partially visible in his uniform pocket, a conversation with another guard about working extra shifts to pay expenses, and most importantly, a carefully staged phone call about his sister's educational costs that he made sure Lady Victoria would overhear. "I don't know how much longer I can keep helping her with the tuition," Marcus said loudly into his phone as Lady Victoria passed through the security checkpoint. The salary here barely covers my own expenses, let alone hers. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it, protecting people who'll never have to worry about money a day in their lives. Through his peripheral vision, Marcus saw Lady Victoria slow her pace slightly, listening to his conversation. It was a small reaction, but in the world of intelligence operations, small reactions often led to big consequences. Over the following week, Marcus continued to display signs of financial stress and disillusionment with his position. He complained to other guards about the unfairness of the class system, made comments about how royal family members wasted taxpayer money, and even staged an argument with his supervisor about being passed over for promotion. The breakthrough came on Friday evening. As Marcus was completing his shift, Lady Victoria approached him directly for the first time since the operation had begun. "Excuse me, Marcus, isn't it?" she said with the warm smile that had charmed the British public for years. "I couldn't help but notice that you seem rather stressed lately. Is everything all right?" Marcus had rehearsed this moment dozens of times, but facing Lady Victoria in person while knowing what he knew about her activities was more challenging than he had anticipated. "Oh, Lady Victoria. I'm sorry if I've seemed unprofessional. Just some personal financial issues, nothing that should affect my work." "Personal financial issues can be the most stressful kind," she replied sympathetically. "I hope you don't mind my asking, but is there anything that could be done to help? I know the palace sometimes has discretionary funds for staff members facing hardship." This was the opening Marcus had been waiting for. "That's very kind of you to offer, but it's quite a substantial amount. My sister's medical school costs are enormous, and I've been helping support her education. Sometimes I wonder if people in my position are really compensated fairly for the responsibility we carry." Lady Victoria's expression became more focused, more calculating. "You carry tremendous responsibility. The security of the royal family, access to sensitive information, trust that goes far beyond your salary grade. It must be frustrating to bear such responsibility without proper recognition." "It is," Marcus replied, allowing a note of bitterness to enter his voice. "Sometimes I see things, hear things, know things that would be worth quite a lot to certain people, but of course I'm bound by my oath of loyalty." "Of course," Lady Victoria agreed. "Though loyalty should be reciprocal, shouldn't it?" "When institutions don't show loyalty to their people, it's natural to question whether that loyalty is truly deserved." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Lady Victoria subtly probing Marcus's financial situation and his access to sensitive information. She was skilled at the recruitment process, gradually drawing him out while appearing to offer sympathy and support. As they parted company, Lady Victoria mentioned that she often walked in Hyde Park on Sunday mornings for exercise and reflection. "It's so peaceful at that hour," she said casually. "I find that morning walks help clear the mind and sometimes lead to unexpected opportunities for conversation with like-minded people." Marcus understood the invitation. Sunday morning in Hyde Park would provide the privacy needed for a more serious recruitment conversation. That evening, Marcus met with Hartwell and the MI5 team to debrief and plan for the Sunday meeting. The operation was proceeding exactly as they had hoped, but the risks were increasing exponentially. "She's definitely interested in recruiting you," Hartwell confirmed. "But remember, once you meet with her outside the palace, you'll likely be introduced to her handler. Dmitry Volkov is a trained SVR officer with decades of experience. He'll be looking for any sign that you're not what you appear to be." Marcus spent Saturday in final preparation, reviewing his cover story and the intelligence objectives for the operation. They needed to determine the full scope of the Russian intelligence operation, identify other potential assets within the royal household, and understand what information had already been compromised. Sunday morning arrived grey and drizzly. Typical London autumn weather that would help provide cover for the surveillance teams positioned throughout Hyde Park. Marcus arrived at the agreed location, near the Diana Memorial, at precisely 9 a.m., dressed in civilian clothes and carrying a newspaper that would serve as a recognition signal. Lady Victoria appeared 10 minutes later, accompanied by a man in his 50s wearing an expensive overcoat and walking a small terrier. Marcus recognized him immediately as David Winters, the man he now knew to be Russian intelligence officer Dmitry Volkov. "Marcus," Lady Victoria called out warmly. "How lovely to see you. I'd like you to meet my friend David." "David, this is Marcus, the young man I was telling you about." Volkov studied Marcus with the practiced eye of a professional intelligence officer, looking for tells and inconsistencies in his appearance and demeanor. "Lady Victoria mentioned that you're facing some financial challenges," he said in accented English that could have been from anywhere in Eastern Europe. "Perhaps we could help each other." What followed was one of the most careful conversations of Marcus's life. Volkov and Lady Victoria gradually outlined a proposition. Marcus would provide them with information about royal family schedules, security procedures, and access to certain documents in exchange for payments that would solve his financial problems and ensure his sister could complete her medical education. The information we're interested in isn't particularly sensitive, Volkov explained. Schedules, travel plans, security procedures. Nothing that would put anyone in danger. Think of it as selling celebrity gossip, except the celebrities happen to be royal. Marcus pretended to wrestle with the moral implications while actually gathering intelligence about their operation. Through careful questioning, he learned that they had been operating for nearly a year, that Lady Victoria had initially been recruited through blackmail involving her gambling debts, and that they had at least 2 other assets within the British government. There's a civil servant in the Foreign Office who's been quite helpful, Volkov mentioned casually. And someone in the Treasury who understands the value of supplementing a government salary. You wouldn't be alone in recognizing that loyalty should be rewarded. The meeting concluded with Marcus agreeing to consider their proposition. They arranged to meet again the following weekend, giving him time to think about their offer and then time to conduct background checks on his story. As Marcus walked away from the meeting, he felt the weight of what he had learned. This wasn't just about Lady Victoria stealing royal secrets. It was a comprehensive Russian intelligence operation that had penetrated multiple levels of the British government, using financial pressure and ideological manipulation to turn British citizens into foreign assets. The debriefing session at MI5 headquarters lasted until well past midnight, as Marcus provided detailed intelligence about everything he had observed and learned. The operation had succeeded beyond their expectations, but it had also revealed a threat to national security that was far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Based on what you've learned, we're looking at a long-term strategic intelligence operation aimed at undermining British institutions and gathering sensitive information about government policy, Hartwell explained to the assembled team. Lady Victoria is just one asset in a larger network. The decision was made to continue the operation, with Marcus agreeing to one more meeting to gather additional intelligence before the entire network was rolled up. It was dangerous. If Volkov suspected that Marcus was working for MI5, the consequences could be fatal. But the intelligence value was too great to ignore. As Marcus prepared for what would likely be the most dangerous week of his life, he reflected on how much had changed since that first night when he had discovered Lady Victoria in Prince Alexander's study. He had gone from being a simple palace guard to being the key operative in a counterintelligence operation that could determine the future relationship between Britain and Russia. The final phase of the operation would require all of his courage and skill, but Marcus knew that the stakes were too high for anything less than complete success. The security of the monarchy, the integrity of the British government, and perhaps the balance of power in Europe itself depended on what happened in the coming days. The game of espionage was about to reach its climax, and Marcus Chen, former palace guard turned undercover operative, stood at the center of it all.